Welcome back to Primetime News.
Special welcome to folks on onespotmedia.com.
First up this evening, police investigators are busy trying to solve the mystery of bodies found in shallow graves in Clarendon.
Who were the persons killed? Who killed them? And what's the connection to the parish of St. Elizabeth?
The discovery has startled residents in Penance, and family members of some missing people fear the worst. Krista Campbell has the details.
Down by the riverside on a hot Friday afternoon. But today, under circumstances like these, the Thomas River in Penance, Clarendon was just not the place for enjoyment. The evidence was all around. Scene of crime forensics experts and investigators meandering obstacles to get to a discovery residents say usually does not happen in their community. Up to 5 o'clock Friday afternoon, our news team confirmed the police removed 3 bodies from shallow graves meters apart, found by men who had gone to the area to mine sand.
Shocking and unexpected. You will realize that this is a very quiet, rural farming community. And whatever it is that has been done here, it's really... everybody's in disbelief because this is something that doesn't happen in these areas.
Police say the bodies are badly decomposed, but news that they could be St. Elizabeth residents who had been reported missing since April 18 has left families and friends worried. Owen Hutchinson says he last saw his 23-year-old son Kevin on Saturday.
I called him about 3 o'clock in the morning and I didn't get a response. I called him on every phone and I still get no response.
Kevin, his brother Clinton Hutchinson, both of Santa Cruz, along with Sean Thompson and Alwyn Griffiths of Schoolfield in Malvern, reportedly left Santa Cruz in a rented car on April 15 for an unknown destination. When the men failed to return home, reports were made to the Santa Cruz and Malvern police stations. The rented car, which had a tracking device, was found days later sometime last week with the doors open on Fogar Road in Clarendon. The police are appealing for any information from the public to help with their investigations. Krista Campbell, TVJ News.
The JLP's John Lee has been declared the winner of the by-election, the Yallas division in St. Thomas. He got 1,859 votes, and the PNP candidate Constantine Bogle 1,338 votes. However, earlier today, supporters of both sides were very optimistic as they went to cast their ballots.
By midday on Friday, it was clear that voter turnout for the Yallas division would be low. A handful of party faithfuls aside, voters trickled into the polling stations. But this was not an issue for either side. Flanked by Member of Parliament for St. Thomas Eastern, Fenton Ferguson, and the party's General Secretary, PNP candidate Constantine Bogle said everything was going according to plan.
We know what the margin always is down on the flat. So we know what we are doing. You know, I'm not going to release all the logistics, but we know what we are doing.
History would not point to a natural victory. What I believe will give us the victory today is the work that we have done in a scientific way.
The last 2 elections in this division had a 32% turnout. Normally by-elections are a bit lower, but we have our own targets in mind in each of the polling stations, and we're working towards those targets and bringing the persons out. So we are hoping for a successful outcome, which would have Constantine Bogle being returned to the parish council.
Just as optimistic, supporters for the Jamaica Labour Party and their candidate John Lee, who insisted that the low voter turnout would not be an issue.
I believe in James Robertson, and I believe in John Lee.
Crowd doesn't determine how much ballot go in the box, so we're waiting on the result.
All that's possible to serve the people. Here's TVJ's Kirk Wright as he recaps the day's activities.
It's the JLP's Tanya Lee Smith and the PNP's Earl Blake that contested the Maypen North Division. The division was left vacant following the death of Melvin Jones. From early, both candidates confident they would win. TVJ News caught up with Tanya Lee Smith.
Very, very confident that this ticket belongs to the Jamaica Labour Party and the people of Maypen North.
TVJ News did not get to speak with Mr. Blake, but we caught up with campaign manager, PNP councillor Cian Barneswell.
I think we will receive far less voter turnout than we did in the 2016 parish council election. As you know, it's a by-election, and the persons are not really enthused to vote, being it a JLP strong division. I was expecting to see buzz of activities happening, but not so this time around.
He also called for the electoral system to be revamped.
Tanya Lee Williams, her vote is in PD 26, which is in the Denby division, which means she cannot vote for herself. So I find it a bit strange. But that is something which we need to look at. My candidate also, his vote is in PD 22, which is the Denby division. But with this one, I find this one very questionable, because he and his family votes within PD 4 within the division itself, and only his vote alone were removed and placed in the Denby division.
Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
In other news, a new Road Traffic Act with stiffer penalties for motorists who breach the road code is one step closer to becoming law, as the Senate today opened debate on the bill. Proposed amendments also clarify how electronic communication devices may be used while driving. Details from TVJ's Andrea Chisholm.
The long-awaited Road Traffic Act was passed in the House of Representatives on February 6, and on Friday, it was time for the Senate to begin its discussions. Leader of Government Business, Kamina Johnson-Smith, reiterated some of the provisions of the law which should reduce indiscipline on the roads. For example, electronic devices such as cell phones should only be used in hands-free mode, that is, with a Bluetooth or wired earpiece.
So that means no texting and no WhatsApping, of course. You cannot hold it up in your ears like you see people driving on the one hand on the road, or talking into it with driving on the other hand, and somehow presume that you are giving sufficient attention to the road and paying attention to road safety.
In addition, while driving, a motorist should always have their driver's license, and motor vehicle owners will have to keep track of the people they allow to use their vehicles.
And to provide this information on the identity of a driver who commits a road traffic offense. And this will allow the authorities to track infringements through licensing and ownership of the vehicle involved in traffic offenses.
So, what if a person has outstanding traffic tickets? Well, they cannot renew their driver's license or motor vehicle registration.
Mr. President, you will also not be able to renew your certificate of fitness. Very important if it is that you have outstanding traffic tickets. So all of this running up of fines and then waiting for an amnesty, those days are over with a capital O, Mr. President.
And if one decides to go to court to contest a traffic ticket?
We've also adjusted the fines such that if a penalty is paid at a collectorate, then for a ticketable offense, then that amount is about 50% less than what it would be if you went to court for the offense.
Mrs. Johnson-Smith says the draft regulations for the new Road Traffic Act are being finalized. The Senate will continue deliberations. Andrea Chisholm, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, opposition Senator Lambert Brown is again raising concerns about the government's delay in answering questions posed to ministers in the Senate. Mr. Brown argues that his questions have been outstanding for 7 months. He wants to know the number of people employed to the government as consultants and advisors since March 3, 2016, the list of individuals, and salary scales.
If after 7 months we can't get answers to simple questions about people employed by the government, being paid every month by the government, some of whom are more performing political tasks than civil service tasks, but we can't get a response to questions.
Leader of Government Business, Kamina Johnson-Smith, said it was regrettable and successive administrations have delayed answering questions.
That is just to say that I don't necessarily think that it is out of disrespect to the standing orders, but that sometimes these things happen. What I can say, and it is unfortunate and regretful, is that I have been supporting since Minister Reid in collating the information and securing it. And we are on our way to having the answers prepared for you.
A top story today, major investigation in progress, decomposed body found in shallow graves in Clarendon. Still ahead, livid father questions why an adult got involved in a fight involving his daughter and other high school students.
The Faculty of Law at the University of the West Indies, Mona, are pleading for leniency as they try to clear outstanding tuition fees. But the university says it has been lenient, pointing to a new policy sent to students in June 2017. TVJ's Anthony Lugg explains.
It's crunch time and university students are preparing for exams. But while that's being done, some final year students in the Faculty of Law at the University of the West Indies Mona campus are worried. They've been informed that they'll be barred from sitting final exams if outstanding balances aren't cleared, but the students want leniency.
We're not trying to get a free pass. We're not trying to beat the system. We're simply trying to be allowed the opportunity to sit our final exams and to complete our degree and at the same time honor our financial obligations to the university.
What the university is doing is applying a blanket treatment to the situation. Law is 1.3 million per year, and it's actually quoted in US, it's 10,000 US versus the other programs in the university which are subsidized by the government, 80%.
The issue of university students asking for extensions to pay outstanding fees isn't new. Last year, the government intervened after several students were barred from sitting exams. It's not clear if all those fees were paid. 1 year later, we're here.
Whilst we acknowledge that the students need to be financially cleared, we're saying that in proportion to everybody else in the university, bar med, the financial burden is greater, so much so for law students, because it's 1.3 versus under 300,000. And we're saying, okay, well, we appreciate that you guys have financial obligations, but we're just asking for an extension so as to allow the law students to meet their financial obligations.
The stance taken by the university has left the students worried.
The student would fully well know this, but the fact remains that it is a strain on any family unless you're from a family that's well off. And the very socioeconomic background of most of the students here is that we're all from working class families who will naturally have other students, other children who they'll have to finance and whatever other expenses. So the fact is that the financial burden, regardless of prior awareness, is in fact a strain, and we're just asking for leniency and an extension.
In the meantime, Marketing and Communication Manager at the University of the West Indies, Kadian Martin, says students were informed last June that the outstanding fees must be paid before exams. She added that several reminders were also sent. Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
Leader of the Klansman gang, Andre Bryan, was again remanded when he appeared before the Home Circuit Court this afternoon. Mr. Bryan, otherwise called Black Man, was charged last month during a clampdown on members of the Spanish Town-based gang. He has been charged under the anti-gang legislation with leading a criminal organization. 6 other members of the criminal network, including Mr. Bryan's mother, Millicent Brown, were also remanded today. The accused are to return to court on May 25.
Residents in central Kingston were in for a surprise Friday afternoon when a large contingent of police and military personnel pulled into the area. There has been a flare-up of gang violence in the Parade Gardens area, and police believe criminals were using high-powered weapons. TVJ's Kalisha Williams was in the area and filed this report.
Detectives, police and military in uniform, search dogs in their cage, all on standby. This is a rumbling in the Parade Gardens area of the Kingston Central Police Division. It's an area the police say has been active with gang violence over the past 3 weeks.
2 main gangs that occupy this particular space have been preparing themselves to go at it over turf. And this operation here is designed to search for illegal weapons and ammunition, as well as to seek to arrest persons who have been imported into the space.
We are afraid to go out at night and come back in because we don't know what was going to happen when we're coming back, so we have to stay in.
Residents were in for a surprise when the troops started rolling in on Friday. From nearby bushes to the houses which lined the streets, no stone was left unturned. Head of operations for the Kingston Central Police Division, Linval Phoenix, was also on the ground. He believes the residents should be more cooperative.
We also need the residents to
where they are impacted. Many of these young men are related to them. They are their sons, their daughters, their nephews, their cousins. And we need for them to begin to speak to them and to really impact them in a serious way, telling them that a life of crime is no life at all.
After searching unsuccessfully for hours, the police and the military team pulled out of the area. But they say their quest to maintain law and order in areas like Rum Lane will continue.
Wherever we have to go in order to treat with issues of violence within the Kingston Central Division, we will be going there.
Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
This evening, a father is livid that an adult got involved in a fight involving 3 high school students. He's alleging that his daughter was assaulted in the process. The father says he'll be going all out to have the matter dealt with by the appropriate organizations. Here's TVJ's Kirk Wright.
The fight between 3 teens of Bridgeport High in St. Catherine happened at the end of the morning shift, right outside the school gate where the students captured the event on their cell phones. Shortly after the action started, an adult intervened and punched one of the students, then tossed her to the ground. That student was taken to the doctor. We received a copy of the medical report outlining her injuries. The child has since been complaining of back pains. The beaten teen says the argument which led to the fight was over a beach trip, but somehow the adult, who is said to be an in-law of one of the girls, sent threatening voice notes to the teen's phone.
I get to understand, say, the told him have a little problem at school from us Friday, but over one beach trip. So the lady said my daughter some explosive language, and decided say she go to school Monday, but take her on. But I went to the school about a different situation, and then I hear what it is to fight. So I think that's the fight and everything all right. But when I go home, her mother from overseas sent me the video with her, with the lady's angry my child like she is her daughter. I look a stray dog from out her yard or somewhere. So I take it into consideration. I say, no, this is too out of order. This needs justice. So I go back over to the school and go to the police.
The teen's father sent us some of the voice notes which were laced with expletives. TVJ News understands that the school suspended the students who were involved in the fracas for 10 days. But the father says he has reported the matter to the police and that he intends to follow it up to the end.
She came to fight. Because before the fight started, you can see it on the video, where she did there as a big lady setting up the fight. And when you get to the control now, she turned on my daughter and hit my daughter like this fair child. She don't speak justice. She don't do the right thing we're supposed to do. She taking a fair own away.
Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
In a primetime news follow-up, a new date has been set to hear who gets custody of the 5 St. Thomas children taken from Matilda Edmondson earlier this year. On Wednesday, a judge at the Yalas court ruled that there's need for more investigations before a decision can be made. TVJ's Shamela Mitchell reports.
Matilda Edmondson had high hopes when she went to court. Earlier this year, she lost custody of her 5 grandchildren after the state determined that she did not have the means to care for them. Miss Edmondson, her common-law husband, her son, and the 5 children lived in a 1-bedroom rundown house in Johnstown, St. Thomas. Given the poor living conditions, she lost temporary custody to the children's maternal grandparents. Her fortunes, however, changed when Food for the Poor donated a 3-bedroom house, but still no job. When Miss Edmondson returned to the Yalas Children's Court on Wednesday, she was prepared to receive her grandchildren, but instead, disappointment.
Tears in my eyes because it's another court date again, so I don't even know what to say next. I don't know if I'm telling the truth, I don't know what to say because I feel sad and downhearted about everything all over gone. I did really want to get back my grandchildren.
She was told that more time was needed before a decision is made.
They have to do some investigation before anything can happen. So, I want to go up and pray to God.
Miss Edmondson's common-law husband, Wilton Lewis, remains hopeful, but...
I acknowledge what the judge has said. And our decision is to go by the rule and regulation of the court. Because we know that breaching these regulations, it will be very dangerous for us.
The children's other grandparents did not wish to comment on the matter. The new court date is set for May 21. Shamela Mitchell, TVJ News.
Road fatalities are down for the first quarter of 2018 when compared to 2017. The Road Safety Unit released the data on Thursday, which show a significant reduction in motorcycle crashes in Westmoreland. More in this report.
An 11% reduction in road fatalities for the period January 1 to April 26, 2018. The figures show that for the same period in 2017, there were 108 fatalities from 100 crashes. The numbers are down to 97 deaths this year from 86 crashes. A move in the right direction for Director of the Road Safety Unit, Kenneth here, but he is still far from satisfied.
So we are making some slight progress in terms of number of persons killed, but notwithstanding that, there are still cause for profound concern, especially as it relates to persons who are sitting in private motor vehicles. We have had 17 persons being killed in those vehicles. Last year was 9. Of those 17 persons, quite a bit were not wearing their seatbelt.
The most significant reduction is seen in Westmoreland. 23 fatalities for the first quarter of last year, 5 for the same period this year. Mr. Hare says one group of road users contributed significantly to that reduction.
I want to pick up the Westmoreland motorcyclists for keeping themselves safe. We have had only one motorcycle fatality in that parish since the start of the year. So far, last year, this time, we had 9. So that's a remarkable reduction in terms of fatalities among that category of road users.
While the fatalities among motorcyclists are down, Mr. Hare says there is still a general concern as there have been 21 deaths within this category of motorists. None of these victims was wearing protective gear such as a helmet. While Westmoreland's numbers are down for the first quarter of 2018, St. Elizabeth, St. Andrew North and Hanover now have the highest numbers. Overall, pedestrians account for the highest number of fatalities, followed by private motor vehicle drivers. Buoyed by the overall reduction in fatalities, Mr. Hare says the road safety awareness efforts, which were started this year, will be increased to keep the overall figures down for the year.
We continue to do our road safety operations in the Western Jamaica. We do not want to let up because we don't want to drop our hands in the West and then it get back out of hand. So we have significant outreach activities going on in that area.
Herman. And before the break, it's time for our feedback response.